praise, glory, and honor is most certainly due to the Most High Elohim of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And I want to say peace to each and every one of you in the name of His Son, Yahushua HaMashiach, who we know as Jesus the Christ. So it's a blessing each and every single time that I can come before you to bring a message containing His Word. I never count it as a light thing to do so. In today's message, I want to deal with a pressing question that has been around for a long time, and that is, how do you know God exists? You know, many people debate that topic. Many scoff at the idea of there being a God. Many people argue, like I said, argue this fact. So, how do you know that there's a God? Well, you know that there's a God we call God in English, because the creation tells you this. Okay, but I want to pick up something here that's written in Psalms, the 14th chapter. Because there are all kind of implications. I think this is a question that everybody, once you get to a certain age, I mean, when I say a certain age, I mean like a child even, you need to you need to really consider this question, because it shouldn't. This is a question that impacts how you live your life. Okay, because if there is no God, you basically really have no reason for morality. You know, you can't really, you know, nor do you have an objective morality. You don't really have, how do you have right and wrong? Based on who? You have to have a moral lawgiver. You have to have, you know, is it just so we could live in peace, or it'd be better for society? But in reality is, if there's no other consequence other than, you know, okay, so you follow the laws of the land. You know, man can make laws all the time that are amoral, you know, or not appropriately applied, or, you know, discriminately applied. If it's really no God, though, I mean, you should be able to really just do whatever you want to do to get by, and to take advantage when you can, and that should be the end all to all. It really becomes about, you know, getting all that you can, even if it's being a predator, you know, preying upon the weak. But the reality is that there is a God. I want to pick it up at something that David said in Psalm 14, and in verse 1. It says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none that doeth good." So you have those that say there is no God, literally, like they are atheists. And then you have those, quite frankly, to me, that I say they cop out. Well, we can never know, you know, agnostic. No, it is, you can know. Or you don't know who God is. You can't tell if there's one or not. You can never know. That's not true. But it does. So you have that. You have those who say there is no God, but you also have those who say there is no God based on their actions. They act as if there is no God. Because if you're saying there's a God, then obviously there's a standard of morality, and furthermore, judgment for not meeting that standard. So let's pick it up in Psalms the 19th chapter, though. So how do you know that there's a God? Well, the creation tells you this. This is Psalms the 19th division and verse 1. And right off the bat, David again tells us. 19:1 reads, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork." The creation is evidence of God. He says, "Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge." In this case, I believe the word for God there is El, which is a shortened version of God's name in Hebrew. It says, "There is no speech, nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world." So the creation is speaking to each and every one of us, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of your language. It speaks unto you. It's speaking a profound truth of the existence of the Most High. It says in verse 4, "Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun." So, you know, when you look out and you see the sun, that is evidence of the Most High. He said, "Which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices that a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it. And there is nothing here from the heat thereof." So the creation, again, that's talking about the orbit of the sun. So the creation speaks unto each and every one of us. Paul comes and expounds upon this idea. This is Romans, the 1st chapter. Romans 1. Romans 1 And we can pick it up in verse 18. Notice what he says here. He says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hold the truth in unrighteousness." Now, what truth do they hold in unrighteousness? Let's find out. Verse 19. "Because that which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made." So what was made? It tells us in Genesis 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that is the truth that they hold in unrighteousness. You know God exists from the creation. And since you know God exists, you know you should be seeking what his will is. He says in verse 20, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made." Again, the heavens declare the glory of God, and firmament showeth his handiwork. Even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. You can read in the book of Genesis, early on in Genesis, where men in the days of Enos began to call upon the name of Yahuwah. They knew his name back then. They obviously knew, from the man's inception that he was there. When it says, "And Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul," when he brought man into his consciousness, the reality of his existence became known unto man, because he is the one that brought him into consciousness. And if you understand that, you know that he knew he wasn't eternal from that very fact. He knew that that was the beginning. He was at a stage, too. It wasn't an infant where he couldn't conceptualize these things. He was a fully developed human being. At least certainly with the capacity to understand that he didn't create himself. You know that because he brought the animals unto him to get the names. And he named even his wife Isha, which meant from Ish. He was a man, Ish, and she was Isha, letting you know he was dealing with intellect or intelligence. As that one philosopher said, "I think, therefore I am." But the fact that I think, I can't, I can't doubt that. Everything else is up for debate. So that one point lets you know that he exists. And man did back then, as man does today, fails to meet the standard that the Lord is requiring of man. But that doesn't mean man he doesn't exist. But what man has done, let's keep reading. So he says, so that they are without excuse. So they don't have an excuse not to serve him. He said, verse 21, "Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image, made like the corruptible man, into birds and four-footed beasts and creeping things." So man, instead of serving the Most High, what man has done, they tried to make their own God. But you can't make a God. So they've done that in their foolishness, in their darkness of their minds, and they have ultimately made a standard of morality and acceptance on their own. Because they don't want to subject themselves unto what the Most High is requiring of them. So they would do this. They come up with their own standard and call it God. That's in your own mind. People do that with Christianity today. People talk about the Lord. They talk about Jesus. They talk about the Father. They talk and talk, but they come up with their own standard of morality. They don't do anything in this Bible, because that will cause you to actually have to live uprightly. Christianity doesn't demand that you live uprightly. They come up with their own standard. You got to go to church every Sunday. That's not in the book. Hey man, make sure you're there on Easter. That's not in the book. Yeah, you want to acknowledge Christmas. That's not in the book. Hey, I've heard people go so far to say, hey, you can do anything as long as you believe. I say, so wait a minute. If you get baptized and you get out the water still wet, and you kill all the people around you that just baptized you, then you run and then you rob a bank, and you running from the police, you rape somebody along the way. Then the police come, you shoot 2 officers, and one finally put a bullet in you and in you. And when it's time for you to what's gonna happen at the end when you die? I'm gonna be with the Lord because I said I believe. You out of your mind. But that's what goes along with Christianity today. As long as you pay your tithes, which is in the law, that they say is no more, you all right. But they're giving you the devil's argument. You thinking you can do whatever you want, but then say you're serving the Lord. So here, what people do, they come up with their own standard, their own God, and say they want to serve him how they want to serve him. That's why you got all this revelry and some of these, fertility rites and sexual debauchery associated, drunkenness associated with these days of pagans. So he said, and idol worshippers. So he says, verse 26, for this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burning their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meet. So you see homosexuality. That is a sign of being godless, right? You know, that is a sign of that. Because you would even deny natural law because you don't want to bring yourself into subjection, and that's going to ultimately end up with your imminent demise unless you change, unless you repent. I want to go to the last place now. Going back to Psalm 19, because it's telling you here in Psalm 19 that the creation is evidence of the Lord, and what is the next logical progression after he's telling you this, where he ends in verse 6. He says his going forth is from the end of the heaven, and is circuit unto the ends of it, and there's nothing here from the heat thereof. Talking about the sun's orbit. You look up in the heavens, you see it is evidence of his creation, but then he goes right into what should be your next logical progression. He says in verse 7, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. So once you understand that mom and daddy didn't make all of this, your next logical progression is who did and what does he require of me. So that's a little bit on, does God exist? It's always my prayer that you were edified.